Africa, a continent of ancient wisdom, fierce resistance, and boundless hope. Across its vast lands, leaders have risen, visionaries, warriors, and revolutionaries, who shaped not only their nations, but the destiny of a continent. In this documentary, we journey through the lives of 10 iconic African leaders. Their stories are not just history, they are the heartbeat of Africa's past, present, and future. 1. Nelson Mandela, the father of a nation. In the southernmost tip of Africa, a man emerged from the shadows of oppression to become a global symbol of peace and justice. Nelson Mandela, born in 1918 in the village of Mvezo, would grow to embody the spirit of resistance against apartheid. A lawyer by training and a revolutionary by conviction, Mandela joined the African National Congress and led the fight against South Africa's brutal system of racial segregation. His activism led to a 27-year imprisonment, years marked by hardship, but also by unwavering resolve. When he walked free in 1990, the world watched in awe. 4 years later, he became South Africa's first black president, ushering in a new era of reconciliation and democracy. Mandela's legacy is not just in the laws he changed, but in the hearts he healed. He taught the world that forgiveness is not weakness, and that peace is the most powerful weapon of all. 2. Kwame Nkrumah, the visionary of Pan-Africanism. In the heart of West Africa, a teacher turned revolutionary ignited a movement that would sweep across the continent. Kwame Nkrumah, born in 1909 in Nkrumah, Gold Coast, was a man of ideas and action. Educated in the United States and Britain, Nkrumah returned home with a dream to free his people from colonial rule. In 1957, that dream became reality when Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence. As Prime Minister and later President, Nkrumah championed industrialization, education, and African unity. He envisioned a United States of Africa, one voice, one destiny. Though his presidency ended in a coup, his ideas lived on. Today, Nkrumah is remembered not just as Ghana's founding father, but as the architect of Pan-Africanism, a movement that still inspires millions. 3. Haile Selassie, the Lion of Judah. In the highlands of Ethiopia, a monarch ruled not just with a crown, but with a vision. Haile Selassie I, born Tafari Makanan in 1892, was crowned emperor in 1930. His reign would span decades and define an era. Selassie modernized Ethiopia, introducing schools, railways, and a constitution. But his greatest test came in 1935, when Mussolini's Italy invaded. Selassie stood before the League of Nations and declared, "It is us today, it will be you tomorrow." Though exiled, he returned in triumph and became a symbol of African resistance to colonialism. He was a founding figure of the Organization of African Unity, the precursor to today's African Union. To many, especially in the Rastafarian movement, Selassie is more than a leader. He is a messianic figure. But to history, he remains the Lion of Judah, a ruler who stood tall in the face of empire. 4. Julius Nyerere, the teacher president. In the rolling hills of Tanganyika, a soft-spoken schoolteacher would rise to become one of Africa's most respected statesmen. Julius Nyerere, born in 1922, believed that education was the key to liberation, not just from colonialism, but from poverty and division. As the leader of the Tanganyika African National Union, Nyerere led his country to independence in 1961. He became the first prime minister, and later, the first president of what would become Tanzania. Nyerere's vision was rooted in African socialism, what he called ujamaa, or familyhood. He promoted collective farming, self-reliance, and unity across ethnic lines. Though his economic policies faced challenges, his integrity and humility earned him deep respect. He voluntarily stepped down from power in 1985, a rare act in African politics. To this day, Nyerere is remembered not just as a leader, but as a moral compass, a teacher who never stopped teaching. 5. Patrice Lumumba, the martyr of Congo. In the heart of Africa, a young man with fiery words and a fearless heart dared to challenge the colonial order. Patrice Emery Lumumba, born in 1925 in the Belgian Congo, rose from humble beginnings to become the voice of a nation yearning for freedom. In 1960, Congo gained independence, and Lumumba became its first prime minister. But his vision of a united, sovereign Congo clashed with powerful interests, both foreign and domestic. Within months, he was overthrown, imprisoned, and ultimately assassinated in a plot involving Belgian and Western intelligence. He was just 35 years old. Lumumba's death shocked the world, but his words lived on. The day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. Today, Lumumba is honored as a martyr of African liberation, a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the unfinished struggle for justice. 6. Thomas Sankara, Africa's Che Guevara. In the landlocked nation of Burkina Faso, a young army captain seized power and hearts with a bold vision for a new Africa. Thomas Sankara, born in 1949, was just 33 when he became president in 1983. In 4 short years, he transformed his country. He renamed it from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, land of upright people. He launched mass vaccination campaigns, planted millions of trees, and championed women's rights like no leader before him. Sankara refused foreign aid, cut government salaries, and rode a bicycle to work. He lived simply and demanded the same of his ministers. But his radical reforms made enemies. In 1987, he was assassinated in a coup led by his former ally. Yet Sankara's legacy endures. He remains a hero to Africa's youth, a revolutionary who dared to dream of dignity, justice, and self-reliance. 7. Jomo Kenyatta, the founding father of Kenya. In the shadow of Mount Kenya, a man emerged who would lead his people from colonial chains to national pride. Jomo Kenyatta, born in 1897, was a teacher, a writer, and a fierce advocate for African self-rule. He studied in London, where he wrote Facing Mount Kenya, a powerful defense of Kikuyu culture and African identity. But back home, the winds of resistance were rising. During the Mau Mau uprising, Kenyatta was imprisoned by the British for nearly a decade. Yet, even behind bars, he became the face of Kenya's independence movement. In 1963, Kenya gained its freedom. Kenyatta became its first prime minister, and later, its first president. He preached unity in a land of many tribes, famously declaring, "We are not a nation of 10 million tribes. We are one nation." Though his presidency was not without controversy, Kenyatta remains a towering figure in Kenya's history, a founding father who helped shape a nation. 8. Leopold Sédar Senghor, the poet-president. In the coastal nation of Senegal, a poet became a president, and a philosopher became a statesman. Leopold Sédar Senghor, born in 1906, was one of Africa's most brilliant minds. Educated in France, Senghor became the first African to teach at a French university. But he never forgot his roots. Alongside Aimé Césaire, he co-founded the Negritude movement, a celebration of black identity, culture, and pride. When Senegal gained independence in 1960, Senghor became its first president. He governed with a blend of African values and democratic ideals, promoting education, culture, and peaceful coexistence. Senghor was also a rare leader who stepped down voluntarily, retiring in 1980 after 2 decades in power. His legacy is one of intellect and integrity, a leader who proved that poetry and politics could walk hand in hand. 9. Samora Machel, the warrior of Mozambique. In the struggle for Mozambique's freedom, one name echoes with courage and conviction: Samora Machel. Born in 1933, Machel was a nurse turned guerrilla commander who led the fight against Portuguese colonial rule. As head of Frelimo, the Mozambique Liberation Front, he waged a long and bloody war for independence. In 1975, victory was won, and Machel became the country's first president. He was a staunch Marxist who sought to rebuild Mozambique through education, healthcare, and land reform. But his presidency was marked by civil war, sabotage, and hardship, much of it fueled by Cold War politics. In 1986, Machel died in a mysterious plane crash near the South African border. Many believe it was no accident, yet his legacy lives on. Samora Machel remains a symbol of resistance, sacrifice, and the enduring fight for African dignity. 10. Robert Mugabe, the liberator turned controversial leader. In the southern heart of Africa, a man once hailed as a liberator would become one of the continent's most polarizing figures. Robert Gabriel Mugabe, born in 1924 in what was then Southern Rhodesia, began his journey as a teacher and intellectual. He studied in South Africa and Ghana, where he was inspired by Pan-African ideals and the power of education. But back home, white minority rule denied black Zimbabweans their rights. Mugabe joined the liberation struggle, leading the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, in a long and bitter guerrilla war. In 1980, Zimbabwe gained independence. Mugabe became its first prime minister and later president. His early years were marked by reconciliation and investment in education and healthcare. But over time, his rule grew increasingly authoritarian. Land reforms turned violent, the economy collapsed, and dissent was crushed. Once a hero, Mugabe's legacy became deeply divided. He was ousted in 2017 after nearly 4 decades in power. To some, he remains a symbol of resistance to colonialism. To others, a cautionary tale of power unchecked. 10 leaders, 10 lives, 10 legacies. From Mandela's forgiveness to Sankara's revolution, from Nkrumah's Pan-African dream to Lumumba's martyrdom, these icons shaped the soul of a continent. They came from different lands, spoke different tongues, and walked different paths. But they shared a common vision, an Africa that is free, proud, and united. Their stories are not perfect. They were human, flawed, complex, and bold. But in their courage, we find inspiration. In their struggles, we find strength. And in their dreams, we find our future. Africa's story is still being written. And these icons, these giants, have carved the first chapters.